Raise some
Cain. You gotta raise some Cain. In the heartland where the faith runs strong, we've seen the shadows growing long. Watch those around us be deceived. Yeah, the fight is at our doors, no matter who we believe. Corruption, lawless day and night, we'll speak the truth into the light. We'll bring the battle, heed the call, watch the whole thing fall. We gotta raise some Cain, show the lies, break some chains and make things right. Feel the power, be the change. The time is now. We gotta raise some Cain.
Welcome to the Raising Cain Show. Tonight, we have a special guest, Glenn Newman, who is a powerhouse of inspiration and leadership. As a motivational speaker and successful business owner, Glenn is dedicated to empowering individuals to take charge of their lives and communities. He is the founder of Marietta, Ohio 912 Project, the OhioLibertyCoalition, and the Mid-Ohio Valley Citizens Action Coalition, also known as MOVCAC. These initiatives aim to uphold constitutional principles and promote civic engagement. Glenn's journey is a testament to the power of faith, liberty, and personal responsibility in creating meaningful change. Join us as we delve into his vision for empowering communities and inspiring positive action. Thanks for joining us, Glenn.
Thank you for having me. It's a joy to be here.
So, I got to know you through my campaign, and it has been, really my pleasure in getting to know your organization that you started, MOVCAC. I guess probably a good thing to do would be to maybe start by talking about what MOVCAC does, and of course, the fact is it started as the Mid-Ohio Valley, as it started over in Ohio, but it now has spread to all over West Virginia and other places. So why don't you give us a rundown real quickly about that, and then we can start with, you kind of sharing your story about how that came to be.
Well, it became MOVCAC Mid-Ohio Valley after January 6th. Prior to that, it was the Marietta 912 Project out of Washington County, Ohio. And that, my wife and I started 15 years ago in our loft there on Front Street in Marietta. But after January 6th, everything changed. And we'd been a part of the Tea Party. We were involved in starting many, many Tea Parties in Ohio, and I was president of the Ohio Liberty Coalition. But about 250 Tea Parties. But it became a meet and greet and sort of retreat. It was we had some great initiatives early on, but it was slowing down. And then after January, situation changed, and I went to the group in Marietta, and I said, either we become proactive or I'm gonna go do something else. I'm 79, and we've been doing this many years, and if we're just going to sit here and talk, bring in speakers that talk, I've heard about everything they have to say, so I was about ready to just quit. So I said, if you're willing to do something, we'll launch and get going, but we're going to turn talk into action, or we're just going to close the shop up. So they wanted to, and so we did, and we did a lot of things, and we've always had a lot of people from Wood County, Pleasants County, West Virginia, because we're right on the river. And so we were doing several things in Wood County down in Charleston. And then one group of people said, we'd like to be part of you. And then another group and another group. And so I named it Mid-Ohio Valley because it was just convenient. And I built the website 15 years ago, and I didn't want to rebuild that thing again. So I made it Mid-Ohio Valley. And then people were asking, join? Can I join? Can I join? And I don't know. I'll just change the name and leave the URL the same. So I called it now, instead of Mid-Ohio Valley, it's Motivate, Organize, Volunteer. I mean, that was easier to do than rewrite all the code. So we're now that, which is really what this is about, is motivating people to get organized and to volunteer to try to take back what a whole lot of people gave so much. We stand on the shoulders of giants. And today, there's not many giants around to stand on. And so getting people involved was really great. And then we had a group out in Romney. And you have to forgive me when I talk about towns, because I grew up in a Yankee form of government. Ohio was a Massachusetts form, and West Virginia is a Virginia form of government. So it's two different worlds. Up north, they go by towns. Down south, they go by counties. But anyway, so then we had Wheeling, and we had over in Morgantown, down in Buchanan, and we still had Meigs County, Ohio. We named it Meigs County, and now we have Monroe County, Ohio, and we have Berkeley County, West Virginia, and a couple of more that want to come on. We're just waiting to get the appropriate leadership in place before we announce it. We didn't want to announce it before they were ready to do that. But it is, we are a candle not under a bushel anymore. We've lifted the bushel up, and we're trying to get the light up. That's what we're doing in a world that wants to stay dark.
Yep. So let me just share a little bit about how I, came to know MOVCAC and you, and what the, why I'm having you on tonight, because I really think that it's your organization that you started is exactly what is needed. And I honestly believe this needs to be replicated all over the U.S. So I was campaigning for Congress, and, part of that is getting around doing grassroots work and getting to know people and talking to people. And my wife and I had not yet met anybody in Wood County. And Wood County is a pretty large county. You got, you've got a pretty good sized metropolitan area there. And I don't even remember how we heard about you guys, to be honest with you. I really don't remember where that came from. I just know that we ended up finding out that there was going to be a meeting at a church. And so we went out there, and we ended up, it took us 5 hours to drive, all the way over there. And, but we ended up getting there, and what we found was a room full of people that had the same values and same ideals that we hold as Christian conservatives. And at the same time, though, what was different and unique, because I've been to a lot of different organizations, as we campaigned, we went to a lot of clubs, a lot of dinners, a lot of meetings with different groups of people and different organizations. But most of those organizations have a political agenda. It's a Republican club, or it's a club that's primary focus is about getting candidates elected and things like that. And I'll never forget, because that night, I think it was, I want to say it was John, I think, was there, but he was reading, we were talking about the issue of these school books, that are, no, it was Jeff. That's right. So Jeff had a bunch of these school books that are the ones that people had been talking about as being, basically inappropriate, sexually inappropriate books in the school systems, in the libraries, in the public libraries. And I had heard about it, but I had never seen any of those books. I just heard about it from conservative news sources. And Jeff had a whole bunch of those books there, and he got up to speak and talked about the book. And he basically read from one of the books and then showed the pictures to the group. And it was all adults in the room. But it was so disturbing, to have that firsthand account or firsthand experience with it that it stirred something up in me to make me realize that this was totally unacceptable, and there's no way that we can allow this to continue. And the thing that impressed me the most was that they had these little packets set up so that everybody could take a packet and they could FOIA their local libraries, and they could FOIA their local school districts, and they could, get, basically FOIA to find out if they had any of these books on this list. And then they had this other piece of paper in there, which, would allow for that person to be able to challenge that book being in the library, and basically using their own administrative process. But they had everything organized, and so everybody in the room was committing to taking one of those home with them and doing just that. And what struck me was that, like I said, I've been to a lot of these meetings. I've been, I've belonged to organizations, and I've, charitable organizations and things like that, but I've never seen, action. It's always been just all talk. And here I saw people actually being active and really getting engaged and talking to their local legislators, and working on relationships so that they could get bills into the House and into the Senate in order to get change in our state. And it impressed me. And then I went, I started going to some of the other ones, that were in the district that I was running for, and that was Romney. Oh, that's how I found out about it. I was in Romney, actually. It was the first one that I went to, because I was in Romney, and this is kind of a funny story, but I was at their Republican committee meeting, which was held, in a small room, government building that I think it was the Health and Human Services building. They were allowed to utilize their room there. And there was this older gentleman sitting in front of me with a ponytail, and what was clearly some sort of revolver halfway sticking out of his back pocket. And I thought, and a big old, buckskin knife on the side of him, on the side of his belt. And I just thought, I like this guy already. And so I got up to speak, and he came up to me afterwards, and he says, you may want to check out this. And he gave me his card for MOVCAC in their Romney meeting. And that happened to be Dave Floyd. So I ended up going to their meeting.
He's amazing.
And he is. And I went to their meeting and got to know these great people. They held it at a church there in Romney. And then that's when I found out that there were other groups, that were around that we could go and talk to people. And so I started, I think I went to the next one I went to was, where was that? At Brickside Fire and Grill. And then I ended up going out to the one in
Jennifer's.
Yes, Jennifer.
Yeah.
Yes. And then I went to, ended up going out to the one in Parkersburg. And then I ended up going to the Marietta one, and then went up to Wheeling. And so I got to know all of these great people, and each group was, a little different, because, in Romney, which is a very rural area, they call that region is the Potomac Highlands. It's mostly farmers and, rural, people with rural issues, right? And so the way they run their meeting was a little different than the way that some of the other meetings were ran. But in all cases, the people were active, and they were engaged, and they were actually doing things. And so I made some really good friends. And in fact, a lot of my volunteers for my campaign came out of these groups in different locations. And I realized the importance, when I first started my campaign, I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just doing it because I felt the Lord calling me to. But what I learned from these people was that no matter what we're doing, whether we're running for office or whether we're, just running our business or, doing our 9 to 5, whatever it is, we can be engaged and we can make a difference. And one of the things that took place was out of the Romney group, and in conjunction with the group out in Parkersburg, we got together and started working on a Parents' Bill of Rights. And we actually, we wrote it, and then through a relationship with one of the delegates who was connected with somebody out of the Parkersburg group, we've got him to sponsor it. We got it, into the House. It ended up being changed quite a bit, but the House did pass it. Unfortunately, it died in the Senate. But it was a testament to what citizens can do if they're willing to just take some of their time and effort, and if they're willing to organize. And the other thing that struck me, though, and I think I learned this when I first met you at the Marietta meeting, was, 501c3s and all of the issues that went on with the Tea Party groups, where Lois Lerner, basically went after him and was targeting conservative groups. Your organization decided not to go that route. So tell us a little bit about that. Tell us a little bit about how MOVCAC is organized and how you guys, and typically where you meet and that sort of thing, because I think that's an interesting story.
It is when the Tea Party was under attack. Lois Lerner used the Cincinnati office to come after Ohio. Ohio was, during the Tea Party age, was very unique in the fact that the Ohio Liberty Coalition was probably the most organized group in the United States. It came together with some incredible people from all over the state, and some really brilliant people. And we had so many attorneys that were willing to do pro bono work. I mean, probably 15 or 20 that would, at a drop of a hat, take a case and just jump on it, which is not right now. And so what I learned out of the attack by the IRS on the Tea Party group was, and I watched good friends be just literally financially destroyed, groups shattered forever, was that Karen and I made the decision. We were at LLC, and we got rid of it. And we got rid of it completely because I didn't want that baggage constantly over us and being held against us. In the beginning, ignorant as I was when we started our conservative group, I thought we would have Republican conservatives donating money to us we would be the troops on the ground and they would be helping finance it. That never worked. They were strictly use us and abuse us and move on to the party. And so today, MOVCAC is, if there's an issue we want to do, MOVCAC came from a friend of ours, Denny Westover, who started calling it that. And I asked him one night, I said, what is MOVCAC? And he said, well, that's a group. And I said, oh, okay, I'm stuck on MOVCAC.com. But anyway, so if it's something we want to do, we raise the cash, we buy it, and we move on. And if it's not worth doing, then we move on, because you can get entangled in who has the money, how much money is there, and we have a treasurer, but in each group it takes care of the money. But you can believe that you're going to get all kinds of money to fund this huge activity. It never comes through. And if it does, then they own you. And there was no way I wanted anyone step in and say, well, I gave you X number of thousands of dollars, so I expect something. So now here's your money back and go away, because we can't operate like that. This is way too short. The fuse is burning so fast right now that in the case of the parents' rights bill, which has to come back up and has to be reinstituted and re-brought up, because after the legislature last year, I had so many people saying, we didn't get anything done. We didn't get anything done. And I said, but we did. We did huge. 3 years ago, no one in Charleston had any clue that there was an organized group in West Virginia. I mean, the Republican Party is a closed club. The Democrats, closed club. So we went down there one day, about 30 of us, to do something, and I had made up name tags, and I should have had one here so I could hold it up. But anyway, everyone was wearing our little blue and white MOVCAC name tag, logo on it. It was emblazed on it, branding us. And so we were up in a room. I'd taken mine off, and I was in a room listening to a lobbyist dealing with a group of delegates. And my phone rang, and a friend of mine in a law firm there in Charleston called, and he said, I got a call from a friend of mine over in the Capitol, and he said, have you ever heard of a group called MOVCAC? And I said, why? And he said, well, there seems to be a mass of them working in the Capitol today. Well, it was only 30 of us. And so I said, no, I've never heard of that. And he said, well, I thought maybe you hang around with that group kind of people. And I said, well, I'll keep an eye out for them or listen for them. If I let you know, I'll know about it. That small group affected. The rumblings went through, and it wasn't but about 48 hours later that a posting went up that this MOVCAC is an Ohio organization that we must be watching. It's an out-of-the-state group. Now, how insane is that? I mean, they actually went to the work of finding out who we were, and they published it. Well, I immediately changed our address to West Virginia, so that had to stop because all it was on our constant contact. And so from there on, we were a West Virginia group. But they see a branding, and that's the most important part. And so the money is not as much as the volunteer standing down in the rotunda speaking or standing on the street with a sign during a campaign. That is huge. And at meetings, we will send, we'll have postcards, and we'll sign them off to a delegate in West Virginia, or a senator in West Virginia, or a representative in Ohio, or a senator in Ohio. And we'll have everybody write on the card that night what the issue is, and we'll mail them the next morning. So they all arrive at the same office from various post offices at the same time. And then they go, wow, I didn't know that 150 people were sending me a card. That must be half the state is after me. So you can do things on a low budget and affect change.
There was something that
And that's
that
the reason
really
we do
impressed.
that.
Yeah, there was something that impressed me. I ended up going down to Charleston. Some of the folks, Terry Hoffman, out in Parkersburg, had suggested to me, you should go down.
Wonderful person. Yeah.
And actually bring the books down there and lobby your legislators while they're in special session.
Yep.
They're a captive audience. So I looked into it, found out what we needed to do in order to get a permit. We set up 2 tables, one in the rotunda in front of the Senate chambers and one in front of the House chambers. And as they were coming in and out, we were calling them over the tables. And Terry had brought with her all of, basically a whole bunch of these books. And we had some big old, signs and stands set up. Parents, support Parents' Bill of Rights. We had several copies of the, 100 copies of the bills there. We had signature boards so that we could get signatures from different legislators. And one of the things that I found was the most effective way of dealing with this. Terry had taken these books, and I asked her, I said, Terry, which one's the worst book of all of them? She said, oh, definitely this one. And she had all the worst parts tabbed, so I could easily flip to it. So I would bring over a legislator and I would say, I would like you to take a look at something that we found in such and such library. And we had the FOIA on the inside cover that showed what libraries these books were in, what school libraries these books were in. And I'd flip to, one of these pictures, and it's so disturbing and disgusting that, to be honest with you, I don't even want to say what was in there, but it looked like something that you would see in a Hustler magazine rather than what you would expect to see in literature. And I opened it up and I just showed it to him, put it right in their face. I said, sir, let me ask you, do you feel like this is appropriate for your 10-year-old daughter or 10-year-old granddaughter? And the answer was, absolutely not. They were shocked. They were embarrassed. They didn't, they clearly had the same reaction that I had the first time that I was exposed to it. Because again, until you see it, It really doesn't hit home. And I think that is why we had such solid support. And by the way, it was several people from MOVCAC that came down and helped me man the tables on both sides, helped me get everything set up and bring this issue forward, to our state legislature. And it was a pretty amazing experience. And like I said, even though we were ultimately unsuccessful in getting it passed, we're going to bring it up again. And I know that I think this time around we'll have a better shot at it because we've got a new Senate president that's going to be elected. Some of the guys that were part of the problem on the Senate side are now gone. And so we definitely are going to, bring this forward again. But it showed me for the first time how important it is for us to be engaged in local politics, to be engaged, with our state legislature.
Yes.
That it's not just about, going to the voting booth and voting. That is probably, the least that we can do. But there's far more that we can do. But oftentimes what happens is either there's a group that's doing something and they're kind of like, they have a sole issue, one issue, group, it might be pro-life or something like that. And that's the only thing they address. And then when that issue gets taken care of, like it has in our state, West Virginia, abortion is now illegal in West Virginia. But when that issue, happens, now what does that organization do? Whereas what I find great about it is its flexibility to be able to deal with different issues that are going on right now. They're not tied to, this fundraising activity. They're not tied to having to agree, or kiss the butts, quite frankly, of legislators. They really hold all the cards because it is made up of citizens. And I think they have the fact that they're not tied to, the IRS can't go after you. They can't try to shut you down. They can't try to cancel you. You guys really operate, you meet in churches for the most part. I think there's only one group that doesn't. And it makes it really difficult for this overreaching federal government that likes to spy on people. It makes it very difficult for them to try to stop or hinder what it is that your organization is doing. And that's what I found, I think, so impressive about it. And the fact that people actually wanted to get engaged and do something in their community and not just sit on the sidelines. So we're going to cut to a commercial break here to give a word to our sponsors. And when we get back, I want to get into talking about what the future you think is of MOVCAC. Where do you see it expanding? Talk a little bit about, what you and I have talked about out here in the Eastern Panhandle. And, we'll get into also talking about what things have been successful with the group. So stay tuned, folks, and, don't go away, but we will be right back.
Born in the coastal plains of South Texas, Smoking Gun Coffee is founded by combat veterans that know exactly what a cup of coffee needs to taste like. Run by father and son, each coffee bean is perfected, roasted at 500 degrees, and cooled with a Gulf Coast breeze. Smoking Gun Coffee hand makes and bags each ounce of coffee for maximum customer satisfaction. With every purchase, 10% goes back to organizations that help veterans and local communities. That's Texas made, one bag at a time. To find out more, go to www.smokingguncoffee.com.
Not believe, no detergent, no hot water, no fabric softener. Now you even threw away all the chemicals to clean your home. I don't need to buy spray to cut through grease. I don't need to buy window cleaners. I don't need to buy carpet shampoo. I don't need to buy things to mop my floor. I don't need to buy things to take pesticide off my vegetables, fruits, and fish. Oh my gosh, where did this come from? I'll tell you where it came from. It came from hospitals. This is actually a photo of a huge commercial hospital laundry technology that cost in excess of $100,000 if you bought that whole thing, and it'll fill up your garage. That's how big it is. And what we've done with the advent of microelectronic technology, my team and I constantly use microtechnology just like your smartphone. The new EcoWasher SE is a chemical-free laundry and cleaning solution. Imagine, no more detergent, no more chemicals, saves you money, pays for itself, gives you a healthier life, and simplifies doing laundry. And now we're going to include 2 free Thunder Pure Safe Air Minis that purifies your home and sanitizes your surfaces like a thunderstorm in nature, eliminates all odors. Plus, you're receiving $100 off by using code podcast on the new EcoWasher SE. Let me remind you, 2 free Thunder Pure Safe Air Minis plus $100 off during this podcast. Podcast is your coupon code at Eco.
Military use when they need unlimited power during critical missions. Civilians like you can now get their hands on the exact same technology within 24 hours for pennies on the dollar. Folks, as a former infantry soldier, I can tell you this is the best and cheapest way to get reliable, unlimited energy. And no, I'm not talking about regular generators or the expensive solar panels. You don't have to be an electrician to do it. There's no maintenance needed. It doesn't take up a lot of space. And the best part, you won't need to rely on the power grid anymore. Click below now and hit play.
Welcome back to the Raising Cain Show. I'm Nate Cain, your host, and we're talking to our guest, Glenn Newman, the founder of MOVCAC. So, Glenn, before we left to the commercial break there, I wanted to, we were talking about kind of the history of my experiences with MOVCAC, and then you were telling about how it got started. Tell us a little bit about where you see MOVCAC going, and maybe also if you have some stories about what has been successful or where MOVCAC has made great strides. Talk to us about what you guys are up to now and where it's going in the future.
My hope is at some time that in West Virginia and southeastern Ohio, that in every county we have maybe not a full-blown group meeting, but we have someone that will be a resource to gather information that is going on in that county and can share it. Because today, with the level of lack of actual print media that has any validity or reason for focusing, people don't even know what's going on in the county beyond them. And so West Virginia has about 47, 48 actual print, ink on paper newspapers. And so I've been looking into these newspapers. How can we tie these into, how can we facilitate and get information to people from that? And one of the things that we did in Ohio, and with the OhioLibertyCoalition, 88 counties in Ohio, and our goal was to have someone in the region of each newspaper, whether it was in Columbus, there may be 2 or 3 papers, but we would have articles that we would put out of importance statewide, and we would send them these articles to those people in those counties, and they would put them in the paper under their name of a letter to the editor. So the whole state would kind of light up with these issues one at a time on whenever the paper came out. And it was enormously effective. We never achieved all 88 counties or every newspaper in the state. But I would really like, because West Virginia doesn't have that many print papers, a goal for MOVCAC to have that kind of voice, that in every paper, a message of the parental rights issue is coming up again, and have letters to the editor in that paper, every paper in the state coming out. And because the papers won't go out and look for that, but they are desperate to find something to put ink on paper with, because they're losing writers and all of that. And that is one area that I would really like to see our group become more involved in, because reaching people with message in small areas in their newspaper. People still read newspapers. There's very little in them, but they do read them. And so as we look at that, that is one of the areas that I really want to reach out and have people get involved in. They don't have to be a professional writer, but we can certainly help them do that. And the groups themselves, it is important. We have Democrats, Republicans, we have tonight, for example, in Wood County, they're bringing in a call from Marshall Wilson. Marshall Wilson's calling in and talking to the group in Parkersburg, Wood County. Actually, he's going to be going on in about 15 minutes, half hour. So anyway, each one of these, we can bring information in that goes on in the state. County commissioners that are being overrun by oppressive other commissioners in counties, that people outside of that very close area, they have no idea that this is going on because there's no real state information system that gives you real news that's important to us as someone that cares about freedom. And that is one thing that I really hope that we can facilitate as we move forward. And what you're doing is so amazing and wonderful. Getting messages out on the website. There's a link there for news and podcast. And I put on there people of interest that actually give interest about what is actually going on in the state. We have actually we have Tom Roten, and as we go through those people speaking about issues, it is very important that we get that information out all over the state, and people support Tom Roten, and get actual true information as we go on. Over on there on the right of that, it says podcast and news. And if you click on that tab, right on that one, you will go to the real news. And if you scroll down, there's quite a list of right. Well, look at that. There's Raising Cain, and Wilson, Tucker, and so it is the one young man there. He is a young high school student, and he is an amazing young man. But those are areas that we try to give people to get true information, not just media rhetoric. So that is that on the issues. As you go across there, the West Virginia, there's a tab that says West Virginia issues. Go over to your right just a little, and there's West Virginia extra deaths. But then back under issues, for example, straight issues over to your left a little bit, you go down to drinking water, the very first one, our drinking water, the top one. What is going on in this area of the Mid-Ohio Valley. The injection well issue there is a video explaining how absolutely horrible the material is that they're injecting into the ground, and now it's surfacing. And communities in West Virginia that have no drinking water, and the wells, that article right there is the wells that have blown out and just spewed radioactive waste all over southeast Ohio. But the media will not cover that because the oil and gas industry, which I am all for drilling, but not bringing up this radioactive waste filled with forever chemicals that is now coming to the surface and ruining people's land, property, and the government will do nothing about it. State of Ohio makes, I believe, $1.50 off of every gallon that is hauled into Ohio and injected into the ground. And so it is a very big deal. And gas wells are literally shutting down because they're filling with water. And gas is going to become a real issue for small developers and small drillers because they can't fight this issue. The one article, the second one there, I believe, talks about Standard Oil is now suing the next one down. That one, injection well issues, is an excellent video. That one right there, Ohio company claims fracking waste has ruined parts of the region, and the region includes West Virginia, because the injection wells are in Ohio, but the water is coming under the Ohio River and moving east because there are fault lines that run the Ohio River, and there are laterals that go from west to east into West Virginia. And when you talk to a West Virginia delegate or senator, they just go deaf. They do not want to hear it, because the oil and gas industry is the third rail politically.
The oil and gas industry funds a lot of their campaigns as well.
That's right.
And that is one of the things that also I think is really good about an organization like yours, is that you're not beholden to preaching one particular narrative.
No,
the
truth.
The goal is the truth. And and I agree with you. I want to see more drilling. I want to see more responsible use of our natural resources, but not at the expense of our health and at the expense of life. And we're seeing massive amounts of cancer on the rise and things like that in areas where the water has been contaminated. Wetzel County is one of those counties where they've had major problems with that. And I think it's important that when you look at what's been going on in terms of what the media pushes, the narrative about, like, say, green, going green, what they're pushing in terms of green energy has nothing to do with being green at all. In fact, it used to be that environmentalism was about making sure that your water was clean, that your air was clean, that your food was clean. And now they don't seem to give a dang about any of that. All they care about is pushing for carbon credits and all that kind of stuff, because big business makes money off of it.
Totally true. Absolutely a fact. And so it is one of those things that is just tragic. And one area that one of our groups has been working on in West Virginia, under the West Virginia tab, when you go up West Virginia, go down to right there, it is the West Virginia excess deaths by county. And it is totally under construction right now. If you click on it, there's only 3 counties that will light up in that article. There's one there for Berkeley, Barber, and Cabell. And the excess deaths in this situation is, in 2021, the deaths by counties skyrocketed. And no one will look into why this number has gone unbelievably. And
it's not, and if I'm not mistaken, when you do dive deeper into these numbers, there's not a correlation with the numbers increasing amongst those who were unvaccinated. It's quite the opposite.
Right. It's exactly. And it's the 45 to 65-year-olds that we're losing. And when you consider the death rate in West Virginia going up and the birth rate plummeting, it is West Virginia is on a collision course with a very serious situation. So that article is only about 4 pages long. Sean and Jeff have worked hundreds of hours on these, and they have all 55 counties done. And we will publish all 55 counties.
Now, on the Take Action tab up here, one of the things I also appreciate is where you guys stand on the issue of J6ers. It's an atrocity that you have people that are being denied their due process, that have not had their right to a speedy trial. They've had in many cases been kept in solitary confinement, been mistreated, and yet you've got real criminals that have actually committed real treason against a country that are walking free. Of course, I'm thinking about Hillary Clinton, and with my background in whistleblowing, has a woman that's never even seen the inside of a courtroom. So I think it's important, and I see here, take action in your community, make a difference, political and legislative guidelines for pastors and churches. This was something that I thought was really good, that I remember talking to you and asking you, how do you deal with these pastors that don't want to do anything or are so afraid, to do anything that might be deemed political for fear of losing their 501c3? And you had this this great little article in here, which kind of breaks down what they can and cannot do, what the pastor can do versus what the church, can do, because the pastor also is an individual and he has freedom of speech. And so if he does correct, and if he does something that's not acting on behalf of his congregation, there's even more that he can do personally. So, yeah, it's a great, very, very good page, folks, where you can get a lot of information. And it's, like I said, even if you're not in Ohio or you're not in West Virginia, this is a very important, topic, and this can be modeled anywhere. I don't think, Glenn, when you first started this, you weren't thinking that it was going to take off in West Virginia when you first started this, right?
No,
but
no.
I think West Virginia is it's full of people that are, rural and people that have I kind of call it they want the government to leave them the hell alone. So,
exactly right.
It's a very liberty-oriented state, and so I think that's one of the appeals of this organization to people in West Virginia. At least that's been my experience.
Could I address the January 6th group again, our J6?
Yes.
Moving on them. What we've just found out, just very recently, was that during meetings we'll have people either bring cards or we'll supply postcards to, and we'll get an address. Usually we get them from one of the ex-prisoners, and then we put that up on the screen, up on our program, and we will go through and give a little background on them, and then we'll give the address, and so then people will write to them that evening on a postcard, and then we'll mail them. Well, what we found was, if we send sufficient numbers, and that number can be all over the place, the government will move those people. They'll move them to another prison.
Wow.
So
from getting
then we started sending them first class, and they started coming back because they would move them from 1 month to another. They would move these people, and it has become almost standard fare. When they move them, they go immediately for the first 10 days into solitary confinement. That is our government.
Jeez.
For these people that have never stood in front of a judge, that stood in front of a judge that just destroyed their lives over something that was nothing. And people have forgotten. We have a husband and wife in South Carolina that have been separated from their children now since January 6th.
Wow.
3 children, and both mother and dad are gone. And it is inconceivable that doesn't have everyone standing up in front of a federal building screaming.
Well, I think they succeeded.
So, anyway,
they succeeded in what their plan was, which was to intimidate people out of their First Amendment. That was why they came down the way they did. They wanted to ensure that nobody ever exercises their right to assemble and make their grievances known to their government. And they have succeeded, because now people are afraid, as they should be, with what has happened. I think this is one of the great travesties of American history that, quite honestly, once Trump gets in there, I hope he addresses right away. It needs to be one of his first courses of action. And those involved in the justice system that have brought this, I think they need to be put on trial, for deprivation of rights, color of law. Yeah,
that's right. It was, we had, when COVID started, we got notified that we couldn't hold a meeting. And so I said, well, we're going to hold a meeting. That's irrelevant. And when we had a parade supporting President Trump during the COVID time, and we were coming out of Ohio, going into West Virginia, and the Ohio sheriff said, you cannot have a parade in Washington County. And I said, well, we're going to have a parade in Washington County. And we had 1,100 cars leave Washington County Fairground going into West Virginia. And he still never forgot that.
So here's this talks about where the meetings and dates and locations. And so you can see, folks, that there's a lot of these and several that are, to be announced that are in the process. One of those is my own county. And I contacted Glenn after my campaign was over because I realized that, just because I didn't win in the primary doesn't mean that I can't continue to work on these issues and continue to be engaged. And the most effective group that I saw out there of any group was this one. And so I reached out to Glenn, and I'm going to be starting a group out here in Berkeley County, which actually has one of the largest populations in the northern half of the state. So I think this will be a really good thing. I've also been working on, what you were just talking about with the sheriff in Ohio County. I think it's extremely important, folks, that you get to know your county commissioners, that you get to know your county sheriff, that you get to know your local representatives, because number one, if they're people who support the Constitution and they're people who support liberty, they're going to have your back. But if they're people who do not support the Constitution and do not support liberty, you need to be made aware so that it can effectively help run a campaign against them, come election time. I've gotten to know the sheriff here in Berkeley County, Berkeley County Sheriff Blair. He was appointed after our previous sheriff stepped down, Nathan Harmon. And I've gotten to know him actually through my church because he attends there. And but I had him on my show and we've talked, and then I had the other night I had Sheriff Mack on, who is the constitutional sheriff. He's the guy that started the Constitutional Sheriff and Peace Officers Association, and they've got something coming up. In fact, an event, and I think it's like $350 a ticket or something like that, but it's down in Florida. And so I reached out to him on Sunday, and I need to talk to him the next day or two. But in September is going to be this thing, and they're going to be training on sergeants on this issue of constitutional law enforcement, practicing the Constitution, whether through posse or whatever. But the whole point is to protect the rights of the citizens that they represent. And unlike, say, a police department where the chief of police is appointed, a sheriff is an office. It's not a department. It's a sheriff's office because they are an officer and they are elected. And that means that if our sheriff is corrupt, we can get rid of him. Or if he's not doing the job, we can get rid of him. Fortunately, here in Berkeley County, our sheriff is, I think we got a good sheriff out here, and he has been doing good things. But these issues, like what happened with COVID, I want to know that if another COVID-like thing happens and they try to tell us that we can't go to church, that the sheriff is not going to, try and bring any kind of action against citizens for expressing their civil rights. So
that's correct.
That's why it's important to get to know who these people are and to, ask them, about these issues. And so I intend on, trying to connect our sheriff to our group and getting him to come, to our group and attend and share what's going on in the community and things like that. I know we've had some major drug busts recently where they just had a massive raid here in Martinsburg. And I think 17 people were indicted. I think a total of 25 were arrested. I know for a fact and this is why it's important to have a good relationship with your sheriff. Oftentimes here in West Virginia, we think, I don't see a whole lot of illegal immigrants around, because of where I live is pretty rural. But the fact is that out of all of those people arrested, at least seven of them for sure were illegals. And the reason I know that is because I sent a text message to my sheriff and I asked him, And he told me. And so, we can see the direct impact of what this porous border is happening. They were caught with, they were selling fentanyl and cocaine and trafficking it, along with, there was also some human trafficking that was going on too. So, these things are important that, to keep in connection with your, with your local officials. And this group can help bring people together in a way that is unique, because it's not some official group, where the IRS can come down on it, or where, the FBI can monitor it. I mean, it's really, really difficult for them to do that. So,
yeah, we confuse ourselves that we would do a real job on them.
Oh yeah, definitely. So, I always, we're coming up to the top of the hour here, and I always like to, give the final word to my guest, and if there's anything that we haven't covered, or if there's anything that you want people to take away from this, here's your chance. So I'll shut up now and let you, share what you want to share.
Well, my number one share, I want to thank you, Nate, for having me on. As at 79, I look around and what we have is our children and our grandchildren and great-grandchildren that are coming under such enormous different world. I hated the term during COVID, when they kept saying this will be the new normal, and I fought that like fighting Yellow Jackets. But in reality, it has settled into our society that almost people believe that the way things are now, it is the new normal, and it's terrible. And so whether it is the books in the library or these drag queen shows that our taxpayers are paying, the taxpayers are paying for in the books or in the libraries, this is the taxpayers' money. They pay this whether they want to or not. And we have a right to say, no, we don't want it spent that way. We have a right to stand up. They do not like for us to come in and say, stop it. And so we just have a small amount of time to say, wait a minute, we have a right. We have a right to say the way we feel about issues. If it doesn't go that way, okay, we can come back and work on it. But unless we stand up and say stop, it'll just go faster than we can ever catch it. And it's in small communities, it's in large communities, it's in things that you never have any idea that it was even in. When West Virginia passes a squatters' rights law for squatters to have the rights on your property to take your property, there's something wrong with the word squatters' rights law. It's just in the word saying it, it's like, what? And every state has it now. It went through the country like a bullet. All these squatters' rights laws. And it is prolific. So who would ever think that? So by people talking to each other, sharing information, someone will say, I never heard that before. Well, I remember specifically standing in front of a group one night and talking about the terrible books in a library. And I said, this has to go. And the man said, well, the state law protects them. And I said, that's impossible. He took his phone out and he showed me the revised code in West Virginia that a teacher and a school and a librarian can expose an innocent child to pornography, where I couldn't. I would go to prison.
Yep.
And I was ready to go to the mat arguing with him. And I stood there and read the revised code and went, this is impossible. But it is true. And it has covered this nation with this insidious amount of trash that the taxpayers' money pays for. And we bought the books that MOVCAC has. We bought them on Amazon. And go to city council meetings and have lawyers standing up calling us Nazis and book burners. And you're thinking, wait a minute, you're an officer of the court and calling us Nazis? What kind of a lawyer are you? Well, there you go. And we're charged. A child is to God that a child is in his eye. And for these people to try to destroy the innocence of a child, I mean, as a adult man, to have someone hand a book to my grandchild to do that, I would say no. And I don't want them to hand it to my neighbor's child and say, here you go. And when you look at the books and you read what is in there, you cannot comprehend that people will stand there and say, do you want another book? Do you want to see another book? Do you want to see another book?
Yeah,
it's
so called
we have
grooming.
To take a stand somewhere.
It's called grooming. And, the first time I ever heard that term was actually Law and Order Special Victims Unit, which is based on, the cops up in New York that handle sexual abuse cases. And they explained it in one of their shows years ago. And that's exactly what this is. And so, it is, it's something that we as citizens should not and cannot tolerate. In fact, I know I said shut up, but I gotta say this part. When my wife and I were down in Charleston, my wife, she was trying to have a dialogue with some far lefties that were, these three women, that had their, had their transgender flags and, their rainbow flags and all that were there basically to argue the opposite point. And the ladies were just being kind of belligerent. And finally, my wife just says, wait a minute, do any of you even have children? And the answer was no, none of them had children. One of them said, well, I'm a social worker. And my wife said, that's not the same thing. And she said, you know what? When you have children, then come back and talk to me. And so, it was a very valid point, though.
That's right.
That a lot of people that are fighting for this are not people who even have children. They're people who want to abuse children and get away with it. So, it is, it's despicable.
Exactly.
And,
you're right.
What you said is that you say no. Well, I'll tell you what Jesus says, what he says. Anyone that would cause one of these little ones to stumble, it is better for him to tie a millstone around his neck and be cast into the sea and drowned. That's what it boils down to. That's what it says. So that's how I feel about it. We're facing a dark time in American history when pedophilia is trying to be normalized and pushed by people in positions of power. It's absolutely crazy. Well, Glenn, thank you so much for coming on. Yep. Thank you for coming on. And
thank you.
I appreciate all that you've done in this organization that you started. And I hope and pray that this organization will, be successful in reaching its goals and, getting people off their couches and getting people, on their feet and out there into the public to, spread the word and get active in their communities. I firmly believe that we have to do our part, and but I also there's this complementary part where God does His part, right? It is faith without works is dead, but we also have to have faith, and we also have to have we got to put our trust in God, and we need to ask for His assistance. Our founders understood that. They were constantly about praying for the providence of God and His hand and blessing in our nation. And so I always recognize that by ending my show in prayer. And I'm going to go ahead and do that now, and then we will end the show. Heavenly Father, Lord, I thank you so much, God, for all of the men and women that you have risen up in places like West Virginia and Ohio and other places around the country to stand up and actually do something in their communities. Lord, I pray that you would cause that movement to grow, that you would encourage, especially, Lord, those that are yours, to stand up and get out of the pews and actually get outside the four walls of the church and do the good work of not only spreading the gospel, but also fighting for the rights of all citizens and ensuring that that their communities are safe and that people's needs are being taken care of. Lord, I pray that you would work within the leadership and of all these different groups within MOVCAC, that you would help them to be successful, that this year especially, Lord, that or in the coming years, Lord, that we would find those purposes and those things that we need to be focused on, and work together when we can, but also to be engaged in our local communities as well. I pray your blessing over Glenn and his family, and over MOVCAC as a whole. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you.
Raise some Cain. You gotta raise some Cain. In the heartland where the faith runs strong, we've seen the shadows growing long. Watch those around us be deceived. Yeah, the fight is at our doors, no matter who we believe. Corruption, lawless day and night, we'll speak the truth into the light. We'll bring the battle, heed the call, watch the whole thing fall. We gotta raise some Cain, show the lies, break some chains and make things right. Feel the power, be the change, the time is now. We gotta raise some Cain.